This morning. My name is Dibala and I trust that you slept easy, you've woken up well, and you're ready to face the good day that the good Lord has afforded us, despite the challenges that we do have with the demonstrations that have been ongoing so far. 2 lives have been lost in the 2 demonstrations that have been, of course, occurring on Mondays, and we are also expecting another one on Thursday, and people are calling out for a remedial measure to have a dialogue so that we can break this stalemate that we are in. Let's see what is fresh off the press this morning before we go on with our panel discussion much later in the course of the program. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of The Standard. Kenyatta's under siege is a splash today. Looking at the bold paper, and you can see how they invaded the farms yesterday. There are hundreds of youth, it says, some ferried from an unknown destination, invaded a city farm belonging to former President Uhuru Kenyatta's family, hewing down eucalyptus trees and cutting away sheep in the evening. They lit fires on the farm, but there was no police presence. And this story is on page 6 and 7 of The Standard this morning. Also looking on top there, CS says, assume office in spite of court order. Is this a defiance of the court order right now? And we know there is an application there to stop the on this contentious offices contentious office of the CS has been challenged by the civil society and also the Law Society of Kenya. You have the story on page 12 of The Standard this morning. Eat chicken feet, Egyptian told as living costs rise. That is on Financial Standard. This is how it is biting right now, and everyone is told, yes, you have an alternative. Remember here, also in the country, we were being told by then the Minister of Finance that even rats is an option. What next for Tottenham after Conte exit? That is the compelling question there, looking at the sports stories. Raila mass action leaves City in paralysis. And you can see how they came out in force yesterday. You have the story on page 2, 3, 4, and 5 of The Standard this morning. KQ slumps to record 38.5 billion shillings loss. It's been on a losing streak there. Airline says performance is the result of reclassified loan that led to 18 billion shillings loss. You have that story tucked away on page 21 of The Standard this morning. Also on Financial Standard, ghost of energy reforms haunt Churchill. Ghost of energy reforms haunt Churchill. It comes in handy for you every Tuesday. This is Financial Standard inside the bold paper, The Standard. Let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. Stop this madness. Stop this madness. Is a dark Monday. Bullets, tear gas and stones in running battles between police and protesters is what the flag is reading on top here. Down a slippery path, a man was shot dead by police in Kisumu and several people injured on the second Monday of protest in which property of an unknown value was looted and destroyed. Odinga were targeted, that is Odinga were targeted. Properties belonging to the families of former President Uhuru Kenyatta and Azimio leader Raila Odinga were targeted for attack with machete-wielding gangs driving away animals and setting a tree plantation on fire at the Kenyatta's Northlands City Estate. You have this story on page 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. And just an instant to give you a glimpse of how it went yesterday. Demonstrators engaged police in running battles at Mathare 10 area during yesterday's Azimio anti-government protests. Also, we can see it on top there. Free for all as invaders carry ship looted from the Kenyatta family-owned Northlands City in Kiambu County. Also, Azimio Chief Raila Odinga addresses a crowd in Kawangware after he was prevented from accessing the Central Business District. Falling fortunes as KQ records 38 billion shillings lost. This is on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Pain as buyouts leave shareholders with bitter taste in mouth. You can follow the story on DN2 inside the Daily Nation this morning. Let's see what we have also on the front page of the Star. And this is what you're waking up to, the front page of the Star. Uhuru Farm Spectre raided in demo twist. In Migori, 2 shots after protesters stormed police station to demand release of colleagues. And this story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. Maxine Wahome Khan family is now the worst of enemies. You have that story on page 9 of the Star this morning. MPs in fresh bid for fat pension packs. They're at it again. MPs have embarked on a fresh bid to award themselves fat retirement packs, including to those below age of 45. Through the Parliamentary Pension Amendment Bill 2023, they're seeking to get benefits even for serving 1 term or less than a year in Parliament. And you have that story on page 6 of the Star this morning. Drought leaves trail of death in Turkana. The prolonged drought has left thousands of Turkana residents in desperate need of food aid. Samal Logiron, who's 84, a resident of Moroise village in Takwel, Loiman sub-county, is among residents ravaged by drought and starvation. And these stories, you'll have more of them as we continue to see suppressed rains in most parts of the countries, of the country and all the counties so far. You can follow the story on page 23 of the Star this morning. Germany rolls out red carpet for Ruto. Hard at work, President William Ruto and Germany President Dr. Frank-Walter Steinmeier at Scholz Bellevue, Berlin yesterday, where he was accorded a guard of honor there. You can follow the story inside the Star this morning. This is how it looks. Let's see what the People Daily is holding for us. And this is what you're waking up to, the front page of the People Daily. Goons raid Uhuru land amid demos. Attackers steal livestock, set property on fire just days after state officers' warnings. And gang on motorcycles also attacks Raila gas cylinder farm, breaking windows in Mili. We have Azimio leaders hold protest in Kawangware, Kibera, Mathare to push for lower cost of living. And you have the full coverage of this on page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the People Daily this morning. An insight of how it went yesterday, how also people came out in force for those demonstrations. And you can see an entourage here of Azimio La Umoja leader Raila Odinga addressing his supporters during one of his stops in Kibera, Nairobi yesterday. He renewed calls for re-election results servers to be opened for audit. And police dispersed protesters on Gong Road. Protesters also lit bonfires as demos turned chaotic. This is the People Daily. Let's see what on top here we have. The teaser, MPs want Kenya Power to stop new IPP contracts, is a story there. And 10 more digital loans or loan firms get CBK's nod. That is on Newsbeat on page 17 of the People Daily. Taifa Leo. Wahuni wavamia shamba la Kenyatta. Wahuni wavamia shamba la Kenyatta is a story that you can follow also inside Taifa Leo. That's the splash headlining the demonstrations that occurred yesterday. Mapambano, uhalifu huo ufanyika sambamba na maandamano ya Azimio siku chache baada ya wanasiasa wa Kenya Kwanza kutishia kuvamia mali ya Uhuru. And this story is tucked on page 2, 3, and 4 of Taifa Leo. Also, we have maandamano dhidi ya Netanyahu ya Chacha Israel. Also, there's demonstrations over the King Bibi, as they call him in Israel there, and his leadership, and how also they came out in force in Israel for the protest there. And moja wawa, wawili wajeruhiwa kwa risasi. This is also following the demonstrations that happened yesterday as well. This is Taifa Leo. You can grab a copy for yourself. Raila na serikali wacheza mchezo wa paka na panya. And also that is all laid out for you on page 2 of Taifa Leo this morning. Let's buckle down to some business. Now, new law forces gamblers to save with every bet placed. New law forces gamblers to save with every bet placed. Bill sets 20 million shillings minimum stake for online gambling. Firms risk penalties of up to 5 million shillings on breach. There's a story there by Kefa Muirore. It says the government will slash a chunk of the billions staked every year from punters and channel them into a compulsory hustler fund style saving kitty. That is savings kitty promoted by President William Ruto's administration as a way of developing a savings culture among Kenyans. Punters will also stake a minimum of 20 shillings through online gambling in the proposed changes to gambling rules by Presidential Task Force on the establishment of a national lottery. Also, we have KQ marking a decade in losses, eye profits next year. And you know all about it right now. You can read all the details on page 2 of the Business Daily. Also, we have on the ticker there, Fast State, that is state-to-state fuel import cargo arrives mid-April. That is Oryx Energies, Galana Oil and Gulf Energy will in the next 2 weeks deliver their first batch of fuel on a 180-day credit period under a government-backed deal with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Also, UAE topples China as top import source on costly fuel. The United Arab Emirates has for the first time overtaken China to become the largest import source market for Kenya by value, reflecting the impact of the runaway cost of petroleum products. And also DTB dividends rises 66% on higher profits. That's the Business Daily for us. Let's look at the editorial cartoons today. I need some advice. That is the current state of play, looking at the demonstrations here. We can see Raila is tooting his horn there. And we have someone who is on the sharpest edge of a dilemma right now on what to do with this demonstration and is seeking advice. Also, on the other end, should we tell him the problem is a working constitution? And holding court there with President Kagame and also President Museveni. So our problem, is it the working constitution, or what is the problem that is bedeviling this country right now? That is Victor in the Daily Nation. The Standard today as well. Gado has drawn this for us. How's oversight role? And you can see knives jutting out of the back of the oversight committee, which actually is right now on a gun, so to speak. Are they performing the oversight role effectively? That is the probing question, and this is what Gado has drawn for us as well. Those are the editorial cartoons. I shall be showing you also what Stano has drawn and Alphonse as we continue with the program this morning. But back to the headlines as well, and just to get a recap of what happened yesterday, I'm joined this morning by Professor Jacqueline Odwal, a politician, and of course also an immediate former nominated Member of Parliament. Also be joined by Farah Malim, who is the Member of Parliament for Dadaab. We'll be joined as well by Dr. James Jikal, who is a Member of Parliament for Seme. Isaac Maura has just cancelled on me this morning, but nonetheless we continue with the show as well. Thank you, Jacqueline. Professor, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Where do I start? Happy New Year?
Well, I think that would be relevant since we haven't met. Happy New Year,
yes,
but in the circumstances,
yes,
a challenging New Year.
Yes. Good to see you. So where have you been? What have you been up to? What is happening currently? Also, do you have any, so to speak, new revelations with this Azimio protest that is ongoing? And yesterday is also, of course, attack of Raila's Spectre and Kenyatta's families as well, the Northland farm. Yeah,
really very unfortunate. I have largely been at my home in Alego, Songa, Siaya County. I have also had a chance to be invited to meetings to share thoughts as a leader and a member of parliament. I got a chance to visit with the SADC Parliamentary Forum. I've also had a chance to visit with a lot of parliamentary assemblies in the region and in the other continents. I think the key challenge here, Tibal, is really about leadership.
Yes.
I think in a way we never seem to understand that there is a reason why we do elections every 5 years. There is a schedule that indicates that there should be time for campaigning, for politics, and then when you have used your campaign strategy to get position,
Yes.
then we now get to leadership. I think what we're witnessing right now is failure to recognize
Yes.
that it is now time to lead, which really means that we need to consider ways of forgetting those who are for and who are against, and really just serve, look at what it is that is the challenge, and come up with solutions. Yeah, I really believe that's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, so what is the stalemate that we've been in this morass for a long time? It's a vicious cycle that we're always in, and we've never been able to break, so to speak, the Gordian knot that every empire was unable to break the Gordian knot. Then how do we break this Gordian knot?
The good thing is that we've always had very clear indication of what the problem was. Because as I was indicating, leadership is about solving problems.
Yes.
And the problem has been failure to adhere to our very clear and useful constitutional requirements, including even how it is that we would want to address or conduct elections. I think we remember Kivutu, the late Kivutu, telling us about the big sufuria where all of these things were being cooked in 2007. It's a pity that despite effort, and I must say very commendable steps, we never seem to actualize it. So the key issue here is that we might want to begin to salvage our institutions. Because I think the challenge has been that we get clarity, we get institutions, but then we sort of pull the rug under their feet.
Okay.
Yeah, and I that's why I take you to Kivutu. He did say that there were things being cooked in a big sufuria. That was 2007. I think we need to ask ourselves, from that point up to this particular moment, have we truly allowed the IEBC as an institution to work effectively? Because if we haven't, or if there is the perception that there is a way that the work has not been done,
Yes.
then that is where we need to start addressing this issue. How do we then ensure that we can have this institution do its work and enable us to accept and live with what they come up with as a verdict?
Right, so there is a scholar who has actually been following the developments so far with the protest. And he seems to say, or to actually glean and observe the fact that this is tantamount to maybe a rising appraisal that the country will be subjected to if we do not really have a dialogue, that they should sit down and actually talk. So this will spiral into a revolution. This is how revolutions begin, when now you don't have even respect for the leaders. You can actually have expletives tripping off their tongues, calling each other names. And then we have also goons, as we saw it now, attacking the private properties as it is. So there is no remorse, there is no scruples at all that we can go full steam ahead for your property. We don't know. Next time it will be a household. Then how do we stop this? And are these goons also sponsored somehow? So let me just rope in Dr. Nyikalo on that so that he can actually give us also an inkling. I know he was on the ground yesterday. Yeah, today also, you came in mint condition. I can't see any band-aid on your head. You survived the tear gas again.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good to see you.
Morning.
Well, there's no band-aid because it was a peaceful demonstration. So if it's peaceful, there should be band-aids. What you realize, maybe if you want to know what happened, at least where I was in Nairobi, is that these demonstrations are actually peaceful. And it is the interaction of the police and the demonstrators. And what has come to my mind in the last two occasions that I've been involved is actually the police have not been retrained since we have the new constitution. They're still in their mind the old arrangements where they were supposed to give permission. They're not supposed to give permission now. They're supposed to be informed. And if they know a hindrance why the demonstration should not go on, then they let the people who are planning the picketing know. But if there isn't, then their role is really just to protect the demonstrators and ensure there is peaceful picketing or demonstration. What has happened, Ibal, on 2 occasions, and I've told you this before. These demonstrations are peaceful until the police arrive. I can tell you, yesterday we went through Kawangware, and we went passed on to Kibera, and there was basically no violence until the police arrived. I can tell you, when we were in Kawangware, we went on until midway, I think perhaps when we were approaching Dagoretti, and we found a police block. Not a single stone was thrown. People were actually going about their business. There are those who came and were with us and were actually picketing, and some joined them. But the rest, you'd find that their wares were by the roadside, and nothing was picked. People were just shouting, banging sufurias. And what actually came to me, and that's what we've been saying, the big issue is actually the food prices. Because what people kept saying, unga, 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 that was the big chant. Until midway, as I said, we find that there's a police barrier with these water cannons and with tear gas. The boys respond, or the people who are in the demonstration, particularly the young people, actually respond by throwing stones at the police. Before that, I didn't even see anybody carrying a stone. And that is what I saw last week. And then we went on again after they actually diverted us. And what is interesting is actually the residents that were kind of indicating that route the police have stopped, we can't. So we actually avoided. There is no problem at all until we reach the Naivasha Road, Ngong Road junction. And again, we find the police there. And then hell breaks loose. We turned up towards Ngong Road, and then through the road to the showground, and then got into Kibera. No problem at all throughout Kibera. People, there was no problem until we were approaching the DC's place, and then there were police there. And then the demonstrators started throwing stones. And the police, you see tear gas. So we left that route and turned on towards Olympic Olympic School. Nothing happened. It was peaceful. People are coming. Those who are picketing are picketing. Those who are by the road are just waving, some from their houses. They were not even locked in their houses. The people who are selling, you could see them selling. The shops were actually open. Until, again, we reached the junction of the highway from Yaya that goes through and
Prestige there.
Yes, yes. No, that was way beyond Prestige when we are now almost approaching. And then we find the police there. They blocked the road. What I read from them is they had this preoccupation that we always wanted to go to the CBD. So even when we reached there, we should have turned left and come towards Prestige, as you are saying, but they blocked the road. So we are actually now going against the traffic and to cross the road now towards Langata Police Station. When that time, I mean, people were going peacefully, but they had been scattered by tear gas at that point. So it was just vehicles and a few boys hanging on the vehicles, and people were going until we reached Langata Police Station. Then again, we find them at the Langata Police Station. Okay, see, then they stopped us. Now you had to go all the way towards Galleria and so on. But this time, we were actually leaving. There was no demonstration. Again, they start to lob tear gas. I've concluded that what needs for the Article 37 of the Constitution to be actually implemented, retrain the police on the handling of picketing and demonstrations. Now, CPD, Nairobi Central Business District area, it was locked. So it looks like any vehicle, particularly public passenger vehicles, were blocked by the police. So now, they didn't only block the CBD for the demonstrators as they feel it, but they also locked it for business people. There's nobody very few people live in central business district of Nairobi. People come from outside to do business in Nairobi. So when you stop people from coming into Nairobi, you lock the business. You are actually people, the police are the people interfering with business because you can't go in. So if you can't go in, no business can take place. So Dibal, picketing will be with us, demonstrations will be with us, and as we progress constitutionally, it will actually be more. We need to train our police. Even in Israel now, you know, there are demonstrations going on because of the decision the prime minister has made to introduce a law in parliament which they don't like. So you don't see this level. Even in France, when the farmers were picketing, that one they were even blocking the road, taking animals and tractors on the road. The kind of violence you see here, you didn't see there. So my view is, it is the handling of picketing. Picketing and demonstrations, we can't stop because it reaches a time when the people have to indicate their feelings. Particularly when you reach a position where the main organ of discourse, parliament, is actually overtaken. And I have learned one thing also, Debal, in this time, that when you have a super majority, however you get it, where you buy MPs or whatever route to take it, then I think you have more responsibility as a majority to ensure that there is serious debate in parliament. You cannot have a parliament where people just vote. There's no discussion. So where are people going to talk? If people can't talk in parliament, where are they going to talk? When the debate starts, somebody shouts in the middle, put the question. And then the presiding speaker says, is that the mood of the House? People shout, yes. And the debate ends. I told you the other time, we didn't discuss the appointment of the deputy governor of the Central Bank.
Yes.
Now I'll also tell you, we did not discuss the division of revenue. I think just about 5 people talked. And then now
a question was raised.
Now they came.
You put up the question.
It came in a more accepted way, but it's still the same principle. There is standing order number 95, where after discussion, a member can rise in their place and say, everybody seems to agree on this, so no further discussion is necessary, or people are repeating themselves. Therefore, we called upon the mover to reply. The speaker then puts it, that can the mover be called to reply? And people say, yeah. But I've seen before, I've been in parliament for 10, where sometimes the speaker would say, if somebody puts the question, no, particularly this thing of the mood of the House, say, no, this thing is so important, we need a discussion.
Thank you. I wanted just to pick your brains before I come to Professor Jacqueline, especially on the attacks on Right Honorable Raila Odinga's farm, the Spectre, and also the Kenyatta families as well, the Northlands farm, and we've seen also how they carted away with some herd of cattle that we could see, sheep or goats as well from the farm. So from your own estimation, where do you think this is leading to? If this is the occurrence, and we're being told also these goons were ferried as well to that farm.
What really disturbs me most, that is bad. But what disturbs me most, that it was preceded by a very categorical statement by the leader of majority at a function, that if you think you have taken land, people will invade that land. Your businesses will also suffer like everybody else's business. If you are in government and you think something is happening which is not acceptable, you have the legal means to address it. You cannot, whether the two are associated, but my mind can't stop associating the two, those statements and that. So it makes me think, as we are saying, what do I think? I therefore think that it was instigated because of the statement. Totally unacceptable. I don't think there has been a time when businesses have been particularly attacked physically. There have been calls that we should avoid certain businesses because of, we believe,
but doesn't it so consternate you if you look at those pictures just on the screen as well, that they really had their time they took their time to cut down the trees. They took the time to actually go and loot the farm.
Again, Dibal.
And there was no
Again, Dibal. Here you
quick
are.
deployment of police.
Dibal. Here you are, deploying police, stopping them, stopping people from going into do business in the business district. And the town is a ghost town, surrounded by police. And here is something that is going on, and is going on for hours, and there's no police response. You actually think that there, in a way, the police are aware, are actually allowing it passively, you know. They definitely can be accused of omission, an error of omission or crime of omission, because they should have been there.
Thank you. Let me hear from Professor. Just looking at those pictures that we have on the screens right now, you can see. I saw even there was a Land Rover there, or is it a Range Rover?
A Range Rover, yes.
Where we had one of the ships being put in. We wonder what sort of anarchy is this, and there was no police reinforcement. Actually, look, you can see what was really happening yesterday there.
They are selling them.
You know, Dibal, one of the things that we must acknowledge is that Kenya is in a very, very bad place. One, because there is blatant impunity. You can talk at one level of how there is lack of leadership or lack of integrity, but you really, by looking at this, just says that there is a sense in which we have reached a point where there are those that know that they can do whatever they want and they will be absolutely at no cost. And what concerns me is, as the Honorable Dr. Nyikal indicates, that when we look at what would be the most fundamental premise that can salvage a country that seems now not to have respect for defined boundaries and legislation, we would be thinking of the Constitution, and then we would want to recognize that those who we see who are picketing, who on the contrary are the ones that are in fact being, so to speak, held, in prison and denied their right, are those that the Constitution indicates that are the ones who gave them responsibility. We have Parliament, and I say this humbly because I'm not a member of Parliament, but even from what I can see is that Parliament can no longer serve as the voice of the people, because when you have these kinds of issues and concern that we have with the cost of living and this sort of blatant, if you like, impunity where you attack private property and you do it on a day that is clearly intended to not only cast aspersions on others but more or less divert attention, because you want now to get the country to get into some kind of war between those who have land and those who don't. My concern is that we are at a point where the only voice that we would say constitutionally would be appropriate, that of the people, the only voice that we can see the world over, we saw it in South Africa, can come out and indeed raise a red flag. Because when you see the mass coming out and saying unga, when you even see them going to the point of saying Ruto must go, you need to say that there is a red flag here. And then you need to ask yourself, the kinds of voices or avenues that should be available for them to speak, are they functional? Parliament isn't. Because there is a sense in which Parliament has decided that they are on kind of a holiday. It seems that Parliament is celebrating what they would call a majority without understanding why they are a majority. Because there would be the need that if there are these kinds of challenge, then Parliament would have the debate at the very least. Hopefully there would be a bill, there would be an effort to try and determine what would address people's concerns. So I think it is very clear that Kenya is really at a bad point. I think it is very, very important that if the police can remember they are a police service and not a police force. If we can have the IG remember that there is a reason why we came to the point of making sure that that is an independent body. If we can get to a point where the media that has so far really had a big challenge, including even yesterday in Kibra, the fourth estate that would be in a position to speak for the people, to help the country to get to know where they are. We can see that where we are right now, all these are under threat. And I want to indicate that this is something that we can be even more concerned about, because the very government, the body, the organ that we would want to see can come up with restraint are the ones that when you listen, you sit and listen to the deputy president, you sit and you listen to the IG, you sit and you listen, as the Honorable Nyikal indicated, to the majority leader, then you realize that this country at this particular point truly is in a very, very dangerous point. And we would want to urge, from my perspective, that the people who then realize that they are on their own, literally, and who from the Constitution can come out peacefully to indicate, no, there is something here we need to discuss. I really do believe that anyone who truly cares for this country would not want to tear gas those. They would not want to, use live bullets. They would not want to, in a way, disrupt businesses. What they need to do is learn from South Africa. In South Africa, the entire day, when there was a demonstration all over, there were only 87 people that were arrested. And this was because the 87 were interfering. So I think what we need to do is get to the point where we want to recognize that there's got to be something that must be done. And the only voice right now that can indeed speak would be the people themselves, because they have realized that their representation, they have realized that those who they would want to speak for them cannot speak or somehow have been compromised.
So what do we do when we have such an inflammatory statement that is coming from the majority leader, who is, a figure that is supposed to be holding the house and looking also sort of like a stabilizing figure, because you have the masses on your side when it comes to legislation in terms of numerical strength. This unfortunate statement, many people will tie into what really happened yesterday. So what sort of remediate measures can you as members of parliament also take, especially from the minority side? Or you just let it go?
Well, we do what we can to try and raise it. But other than actually literally bringing disruption in the house and visibly even fighting, which I don't think would solve the problem, because we also see similar inflammatory statements in the house. And I think more than once I've actually come up on a point of order and said it is not necessary to mention the names of people who are in the house. And unfortunately, the same individuals whose property have been attacked are the same individuals that actually get constant attack by the leader of majority in the house. And think in two cases, the presiding speakers have actually indicated and said there is standing order against that. But it goes on. So to me, we will do what we can in parliament, but we have reached a position, and I told you the other day that what is happening in parliament, I'm actually more inclined that we continue with the demonstrations, because if we have lost a constitutional provision, all constitutional provisions don't seem to be working, then again, you must go to what it is. The origin of the constitution is the people. Go to the people. Make it as peaceful as you can. Because these people in parliament have been elected, and they're probably going to listen more to the voice of the elected, of the people who elected them. We will mobilize, we will debate, but there's something that has also been lost in parliament, which I think is a great principle. The minority will have their say, while the majority will have their way. When you stop the say from the minority, then what is there? It's gone.
All right.
So as much as we, fortunately, occasionally, I don't know what happens, and we agree, like when we were discussing a motion, but this was just a motion, not a bill, on the cost of electricity. People actually, there was good agreement. So I think it is actually the leadership in Parliament, particularly the leadership of the majority side, that hold the key to peaceful discussions, starting with Parliament in this country. As a minority, even if we want to have a discussion and they say they stop the discussion, and they stop stopping within the accepted orders of the House. Because I said earlier, if you have a majority, you have a big responsibility, regardless how you got the majority, you have a big responsibility to ensure that all voices are heard.
All right. So Ishungu
So we will raise this thing.
Ishungu has insulation from the House when he speaks such a statement. Nothing can really happen. But this now was not really made in-house. It was outside.
You know, even
do you, from your own assessment, do you think this is tantamount to a hate speech?
This is the body responsible for cohesion should look at this. Yeah,
It's incitement.
this you
It is
talk
incitement.
like you talk, and this happens.
Yeah.
We can just assume that they're related, and therefore the people who are responsible should take. Even the police in the investigation of this matter should actually question the person who made what a speech very much related to what has happened. There's no doubt about that. And when we go to the House after the recess, I'll actually tell my colleagues that whether you are involved or not, the coincidence is too much. You are a leader. In fact, in hierarchy, in power relationship, the leader of majority is almost third, if not fourth, maybe. Because when you are in the House, you have the Speaker, and next to the Speaker is the leader of majority.
Thank you. Professor, do you think this is a payback to, you know, the Uhuru family and also Honorable Raila Odinga, as it is a revisiting? Some of them, they said, we'll list them. They've not listed as far as evading of tax is concerned. Do you think there is a concerted effort from the government or the government operatives in terms of going after these families?
I certainly think that there is a sense in which, as I said earlier, we have a government that does not seem not only to know what they need to do in terms of the commitment and in terms of really just good governance, but we seem to have in government those who are politicking. There is a clear difference between politics and campaigns and what, quote unquote, might perhaps be seen to be admissible because you are playing politics, because it's saying all is fair, you know, when you're fighting. But once you already get the opposition and you are government, we would want to see a framework. We would want to see policy. We want to see something that indicates this is where you would want to take the country. Why I say that this, to me, is just a very sad indication of failure is that whenever you look at government and how it operates, you would not only need to know policy and get to see the direction, but you'd also need to see a spokesperson. Anytime you have government, you've got to get a spokesman. So that whenever utterances are made, if they are not made by the named or designated spokesperson, you can relax. But we have a government here where we hear the DP say this, we hear Malala say that, we hear the leader of majority say the other, and these statements, by their very pronouncement, are very weighty and disturbing because they do not, by any manner, provide a direction towards pulling the country together. And therefore, I think, Debal, that we have early warning signs. And I think we clearly see this, not just from the pronouncements, but indeed from the manner in which we are not leading the country. Because leadership is identifying problems and then seeing how to solve them. The problem that everybody is talking about is a high cost of living. The problem that all the people are talking about is unga. The problem that everybody's talking about is the kinds of appointments that is going to give us the sort of bill, wage bill, that will completely just make things go out or, skyrocket. The problem is electricity bill is going to go. There is a sense in which when you look at this and then you see the pronouncements and the activities, then you need to see that it is time, in my view, that we do not only look at this as what should be seen as payback, because I do not want to imagine that we are going to have a situation where a government would be engaged in fighting individuals. But I think it is a point where we must recognize that there are institutional bodies that are intended to address issues of cohesion and integration, and these bodies were in fact put in place precisely to avoid this kind of occurrence, and there are very clear early warning signs. And I would like, as somebody who has fought really to try and get this country to reach its potential, especially through the women's voice, I'd like to call on the women. Because when you watch that scene,
yes,
you might have seen some women there, but I don't think that there are many. One of the things that we must learn is that when we get to the point where the institutions do not seem to function, then we now need not only to go back to the civil society and bodies that are organized, but we need to get those who do not want to see this country burn to speak. And I know for a fact that in 2008, there was the voice where women came together across, whether they were women who were in leadership, in what, but they came and they would say no. And they would need to approach government and the leaders from opposition, the leaders from government, and say this is really something that we are not going to sit back and watch. Because I have seen that religious bodies they have come, at least the Catholic KCCB came up with some statement, and I know there were appeals, but my challenge is that we find that there is a sense in which the politicking had sort of placed the church in a way that looks like they might not necessarily be neutral. What we need now, Debal, is as much as possible to allow the demonstrations which are peaceful to be an expression of the frustration of the people of Kenya. I specifically want to challenge. I know there are women who are watching me and who are listening, because I have been, to Liberia, I have been to Sierra Leone, we have been in terms of what we were looking at, seeing how when the country seems to be under such threat, before it spirals, then we need to call for the voice of reason, and we need to hold and call to account the majority leader. We need to hold to account the DP. We cannot allow someone to go around making threats when they are supposed to be those who will protect and be silent. So that is what I would say.
Right, thank you. So we have the church as well. You've mentioned the church with the Catholic Conference of Bishops. They are making their own pronouncements regarding understatements that there should be a dialogue. But also yesterday we have another segment of the church that came to the fore and said, this call for dialogue is uncalled for because it is retrogressive, to the democratic rights enshrined in our constitution. We moved forward, and a person who has won, the election cannot be shoehorned to have a conversation with the person who has lost the election for them to have or form a government. So the church also is split in terms of coming with one voice on this particular matter. That dialogue is off the table. So if dialogue is off the table, no talks are called, at all, then what is the prime solution that can actually break this stalemate?
Just before the Honorable Dr. Nikal comes in, I was not talking about dialogue. I'm not calling women to come and say that there will be dialogue. I'm calling women to come and do what they would do even if it was their homestead. If you were in the homestead and you're in the house and there is clearly the head of the house or the person who is supposed to protect has become the one that now is fanning the fire, then you would say no, you hold them to account. You say this cannot be done. I believe that where we are right now in this country, precisely because of the kind of pronouncements that have come even from a lot of the spokespeople from the government side, if you were to talk about dialogue, there is a way that they would see that this, in fact, is what it is that you are looking for. They would not see the cost of living. They have completely turned their blind eye to the manner in which we have, over the years, had challenges with how it is that the body that is charged with dealing with elections needs to be seen to be above all. They don't seem to respect that whenever you are in a democracy, you need to celebrate and nurture different political parties. Dibal, we have fought in this country to move from the one-party rule where you had the knife, you have a yam, and unless you cut it, nobody can eat. We have come from the point where you needed to go and bend and go down on your knees and say, can I now get development? It is shocking that we would get to a point where you have elected leaders who then believe that there is a way that you need to go to a particular place or person to get development. So I'm not talking about dialogue. I think dialogue is what it is that this cohesion body needed to have been thinking about. Dialogue in a context where the very people that you would want to talk do not in themselves recognize their responsibility is a challenge. So I would like the women in Kenya to hold to account, because they can. Right now we have the mass, the people who are coming in because of their sovereign power in the constitution, but I know, Dibal, because this is how I have come up in leadership, that women do all over the world
but
have a responsibility.
We've had pockets of women actually coming to the fore and speaking in disregard of the demonstrations as well. I think women in business that we saw yesterday making also their own statement to the latest development. But still, let me come to Nikal with the same question before we take a short break. And then if maybe you can allow me to take, because I can see we're due for a station break, then we circle back with you.
That's okay.
Yeah, for the variegated voices that is coming from the church. Some are for dialogue, others are not for dialogue. So what solution do we have on the table if we know we can run to church in times of like this, that we take refuge in the church and to just get a voice of reason as well from them? We take a short break right now. You're watching Siasa Fiesta. When we circle back, we'll continue with more. Don't go away.
God who seems to agree.